What is going on, everyone? Tutorial Tim here at Design Academy, and today we are going to be going over date pickers, and we're going to gain a general overview of what date pickers there are out there and when and how they're used, and then we're going to build out some date pickers ourselves. And here we have the documentation, and I'm going to go ahead and open the link. And once your link opens, as you can see, date pickers let users select a date or a range of dates, as you can see here. This specifies the current date and then the selected date here, and we have a header, little edit icon to edit the date from this field here, this header. Drop down menu there, and some arrows to move between months, and so there's some elevation being utilized. And here's a breakdown of the anatomy of a mobile calendar date picker. And here you can see that it has a title up above, and then the selected date here being represented, and then it has the switch to keyboard input icon, which is what this is called, and then it has the year selection menu, and we also have the pagination for going from month to month, either forward or backwards. And then we have the current date here. This is represented with this outline, and then we have the selected date here with a primary color as the background specified, and some actions there to cancel or hit OK. And you can see what the mobile date range picker looks like. So here's a mobile calendar date picker. So this is a calendar date picker. And then we have the date range picker. So you can specify a start date and a end date. And then this is the selected range here with the lighter primary color in the background. And then we have a mobile input picker variant, a bunch of breakdowns of the anatomy there and whatnot. And this video is going to be very dense. There's a lot of things going on in this date picker component, and we're gonna break it down. We're really gonna simplify it and start off with the little elements that it's composed of, and then build out those elements accordingly. With that mental model in mind, we'll be able to tackle building out these complex components. So that is awesome. And we're going to be building out not only mobile variants, but also desktop variants. So that's great. And here, if we go to our specs, you can see that we have touch targets specified for a mobile date picker, where the touch target size for a date picker is set to 32 by 32 dips. This is the recommended approach here. And the outer container is set to 48 by 48 dips. And here we're starting to see the specs of what the calendar header looks like here. So that is very important. And a bunch of specs specified too right there, so you don't miss anything since there's a lot going on. And here you can see a calendar view for the mobile date picker and a year selection view, so on and so forth. We're going to be covering these heavily in Figma, so let's jump right into it. So here I have our soon-to-be sticker sheet here, and here's a couple elements we'll be building out. So we have the mobile calendar header right here that we're going to build out, and our mobile calendar picker tool, calendar picker image here to reference. So I'm going to move some of these images out of the way. So just keep these here, push this image up, and with that we can go ahead and get started. So I'm going to go ahead and copy this text, because that's going to be the name of our main component once it's created. And we can go ahead and start to figure out what the width of this calendar view should be, and that's set to 328 dips. So if we type in 328, we now have the width specified, but what we need to identify next is the height of this calendar header. So here you can see that it's set to 120, and then we have 32 plus 24, so and then plus 120. So with that, we get 176. So the height of this is set to 176. And now that we have the height specified properly, we're going to want to also specify the rounded corners on this parent frame. So set the rounded corners on independent corners. So we're going to want to set it to the top left and top right and set that to 4. Now our corners are rounded on the top. And what we're going to need to do is add an overline text property here. As you can see, the baseline is set to 32 dips. So if we go ahead and pull out our text tool and just specify select date and then change the text style to overline, we now have select date specified, and all of our content will be 16 dips to the left. And I'm going to ensure, or actually 24, my apologies, set to 24 dips to the left here in this header. And then we're going to check that baseline and ensure it's set to 32. So 30, we're almost accurate. So now that we have that set there, the baseline set to 32, we're good to go. And one thing we do need is in this exercise file, here are some icons. I'm going to copy this edit icon and I need to place it towards the right of this this field. So one thing I need to specify is that what I could do is in this component, if I name this properly, in this element, which is a calendar header, I can start to wrap these elements accordingly. So maybe I want to turn this into a frame and label this select date row. And with this row, what I want to do is make sure that I hold down Command and snap this to and drag this to the top and right edges of the parent frame. So that way this content is being isolated from the text field here, because you see this box specified here, this entire, you can think of it as a row when you implement this in development. And then we have another row below it with a big header. So we'll go ahead and add that. I believe that is an H1. I'm going to specify that exact date, November 17th on Monday. Go to my text styles and select the H1, and it's clearly not an H1. We're going to want to change that to an H3. This looks like it's actually an H4. So I'm going to snap this to the bottom right. And what we want to do is make sure that our text here is 24 dips from the left. And not only that, we're going to have to go ahead and align our icons here. But on top of that, our typography here, you'll notice in this component below, we have another portion of the header that has a white background. So what we're going to do is specify the distance here. So we have 120, 72. So we have a distance, I believe, of about roughly 16 here. It's not really clear. So if we subtract 72 plus 32, 104, 120 minus 104, we're getting 16. So yes, we want to ensure that we have specified the height of the bottom portion. So what we can do is if we change this background or these colors to text, and I can content on primary, and then I can change this to content on primary as well. And I go ahead and select the background fill of the container of the component, and I select that to primary. All I have to do is I could even duplicate this row, delete the text in that frame, and specify this background to be set to surfaces surface. And I just need to ensure that the height is set appropriately. So it's set to what is that, 32 plus 24, which will give us 56. So the height's set to 56 on this element, and I can just make sure that it snaps to the bottom there. And with that justified, I just need to make sure that this typography, this typography and icon are 16 dips from the bottom, which we have now justified, and 24 dips on the left and right. And as you can see here, the typography is 64 dips to the left of this icon, which now that everything is set proportionately, we are good to go. So I just need to make sure this icon is aligning to the baseline of the text in this date picker. So I need to push that down 1 pixel. And now that is being aligned. So that is great. And we are rocking and rolling. So we're almost done. We need to go ahead and build out our typography here. So here you can see that there is padding on the top and bottom of this section here. This date picker row. So I can specify that. And once that is specified in this date picker row, I'm going to need to ensure I have the proper typography specified. And this looks like it's utilizing a caption text style. So this will essentially be centered. And with that caption text style, I'm going to just type in November 2018, select my caption text style, and center it since it's wrapped in a row that has a height of 56. And the specifies that the baseline's 32 pixels from the top of this. I'm just going to center it, as it clearly is centered in this element, and ensure that's set to 24 dips on the left. And we're also utilizing a arrow drop down icon. So I can copy this here, go ahead and select this date picker row, paste it in, and start moving this until it is 4 dips to the left of this text. So now that is up to spec. Here, 4 dips there from the left of this text. And now that is implemented, we can go ahead and add the icons for moving between months. So I have both of those here. I'm going to copy those and specify the spacing to 24 between the icons. And there's a spacing of 24 as well right here. So I can actually just go ahead, drag these in here. And once these are dragged in, just kind of move these elements accordingly. And now we are good to go. We have created our header, and we can go ahead and double check spacing as needed. There's 16 dips set on top and bottom between our elements there. And we can even wrap these two together if needed. You can apply constraints in relation to its parent element. So I'm setting everything here to left and center vertically. And then I'll set these two icons to right and center vertically. So if they stay on their sides, if they move, if the width gets, if there are any changes in width there. I'm going to also select the date picker row and just specify that it's always stays on the bottom and is set to left and right so that it is constrained proportionately. And we should be good to go. So now with this calendar header created, we can go ahead and start to use this element across other mobile elements as well. So if I go ahead and I can just duplicate this in case I want to create a variant of it, but establish this as a main component and then duplicate that. We can go ahead and proceed to tackling our first date picker, which is the mobile input picker. So what we're going to do is we have the header, so we can copy the header, and we need a text input field here. So if I go to my assets and ensure that we always have our material design system library on, I'm going to go ahead and search for text input and text fields, and then I can go ahead and just access a text input field, and we can go ahead and select, say, this component. And with this component specified, we're going to want to wrap this in a frame as well, and just pay attention to these specs here. So the specs have this set to 16 dips on top, from the top, and what we need to do is create a parent container. So we're going to establish this as the mobile input picker. So this parent container will be called the mobile/input picker. And then I'm going to specify the height to 264. You'll see that there's some space there. And then I'm going to go ahead and use this variation of the component here and just reference that and place this into the container. It has the proper padding on the left and right already. Just need to ensure that the padding on the top is set to 16 there, which it is. And now we just need to implement a background, which is set to fill surfaces surface. And one thing to note is that we need to specify the corner radius of the parent container to 4 all around. And it also, since this is a modal here in this scenario, we need to specify the elevation to 24 dip elevation on the parent container. And now we can go ahead and just use this example text field. Notice that it isn't the right type of text field, but this is just an example of implementation. And here you'll notice that we might need another header variant. So that's kind of why I duplicated this here. So I want to actually maybe go ahead and delete this date picker row. And before I delete that date picker row, I want to go ahead and select the parent container and move this content up and make sure it snaps. And then delete that date picker row below and make that a main component and duplicate it. And then we'll use this one instead. So if I go ahead and delete that and I paste this and snap it to the top, I can move this element up so that it is 16 dips from the top. We now have that date picker, and the width is still set to 364, so I need to change that to 264. And we're going to go ahead and implement some text only buttons now. So I'm going to go to my assets, just pull in that text button, and I need 2 of them. I need one that says OK. So I'm going to go ahead and drag that in there. And what we're going to want to do is snap that and ensure that the typography aligns with the end of this text input field, which it does, meaning that this parent frame of the button is 16 dips to the right from the container there, and it is 16 dips from the bottom as well. So that is equivalent, equal in size. And I'm going to type in cancel on this text field. And once that's specified, we'll just align that here with this other button, and it has to be 8 dips to the left of the OK button. So now we have created our mobile input picker quickly, and this is one of the easier date pickers to implement. So with that, I'm going to make this a main component, which is great. Now we got we got our first date picker here for mobile. And next we're going to tackle one of the more complex components. So here you'll start to see what these are composed of. Maybe we'll start with year selection view. It's a little simpler to tackle at first, not as overwhelming. But this is how we're going to break down this component. So what are we seeing here? Well, we're seeing that we need to create units. We can call these units, or these cells, which will be our elements for date pickers. And these elements contain the text, of course, and it's giving us the dimensions of this cell that we're going to create. And it's 52 dips in height, and it is 88 dips wide. So what we're going to essentially, and it has a selected state variant. So we're going to need to make that selected state as well. And that is specified here at 72 dips wide and 36 dips in height, and it utilizes the primary background color. So that's great, and we already have our header component here. So we can go ahead and bring a copy of that here, and you'll notice that it doesn't utilize in the year selection view for the mobile date input picker. It doesn't utilize those icons there. So we can go ahead and just remove those. So when we delete those instances in our instance, it'll just hide them, which is fine. Don't worry about it. And we can go ahead and start to create these cells, right? So what we're going to go ahead and do is create a frame. Label this elements, space/space, year selection cell. And then we can label that the default cell, because we're going to have an active cell or selected cell too. We can label that this one unselected. And then we're going to create another one later called selected. So now we have both those. Ensure that the fill is set to surface. We're good to go. And what we're going to do is just specify the height for both of these to 52. Kill two birds with one stone there. And the width for both of them is set to 88 dips. That's fantastic. Now we have typography in the middle. So in this cell we have text. We can, let's see, 2011. I can select that, 2011. And I'm going to make sure this typography is set to high emphasis. And then ensure that the resizing is set to auto width. And now I need to apply the proper text style. So it looks like it uses a caption. So it looks like it uses a caption. I'm trying to just verify that there. It looks accurate. We can also reference the documentation if we ever get confused on what text style is being utilized. But I have not found any specifications on that. So here we have that typography for the text. Maybe we want to apply, let's double check and see if we need to utilize the body text style. That looks much better. So if we apply that body text style and just center it vertically and horizontally with the the shortcut keys Option V and H, we should be good to go. So we have the cell. And now that we have that, honestly, that was the only thing we were missing. We just need the variant of this. So the variant of this, I'm going to copy that text, paste it, and with this cell, let's just set the constraints to center vertically and horizontally. And then do the same exact thing here within this container cell. So it just stays center, but there's not going to be a scenario where we need to resize it, but just for best practices. So with the selected variant, we're going to have to select the color content on primary. I know we can't see it, but we're going to end up creating a rectangle with a width of 72 dips and a height of 36. And we're going to have to round out the corners of this. We can change the corner radius to 24 there. I'm going to center this, place this behind the typography using command left bracket so it changes in the layering order, and label that to state overlay. And now we can go ahead and change the fill color to primary. And we have now achieved our selected state. And we should also specify that the typography, both of the alignments are set to text align center. So it resizes from the middle when your designers are renaming this. And we should be good to go. So now that we have both these cell variants, let's go ahead and just build out this year selection view. So here you can start to see how we're building these modular elements to build out entire interfaces. So I'm going to create these multiple components. I have this one already. And we're going to want to go ahead and just move these up. And I'm going to duplicate this unselected variant. Whoops. Once I've duplicated that, what we want to specify is, let's say, I'm going to wrap this in a frame, label this, I'm I'm going to grab the naming convention for this. The mobile. This is the mobile year selection view date picker variant. So this frame will be labeled exactly that. And I'm going to apply a background color, a fill color of surface. So now I'm just going to stretch that height out because we haven't defined that exactly yet, but we will. And you'll notice that there's also a divider being used in this component. And then the content gets cut off under it. So we have 3, 5. So with this component selected, let's make sure it's within our frame here. So I'm going to drag that in there, snap it to the left, make sure that has a left padding of 24, and is snapping to the bottom of the calendar header. And what we can do is just go ahead and duplicate this, and there's a spacing of 8 dips between the elements, and I just hit Command D to duplicate that. And now we can just shift select all 3 of these in this row, and I can go ahead and just duplicate those downward, hold down Command D, and they're all aligned. As you can see here, there's no spacing between them vertically, only in terms of the width. There's that gutter. So I have 4, 5, and then I got 6, but I'll save 6 for later. And what we can do, if there's way too many elements here, if that's difficult for you to read, well, maybe we could just clean this up by selecting them in a row format. Or actually, we're going to want to group these in a column format, because on mobile, users will scroll through these columns vertically, I'd imagine, as opposed to horizontally. So you could create prototypes of this component in Figma with this column layout. So I'm going to wrap this in a frame, label this column 1, cell column 1. If you want, just maybe just label it column 1. That might be easier. And then I'll do the same exact thing for this set of elements. Whoops. Hold down Command Shift G to rename it, and then rename it column 2. Now we'll go ahead and tackle the third one. Very straightforward. Group it, rename it column 3. And one thing about these columns is that there's 5 rows here in each column that aren't cut off. There's a 6th row that gets cut off, but we're going to save that and go ahead and implement our buttons once more. And we had already created the cancel and OK buttons here, so I'm going to Command click on these and hold Shift Return to select the parent layers and copy that, and the padding set to 16 and 16 on each side. I'm going to select the parent frame here and paste these and move them down and ensure that they're set to 24, and I believe 24 on the right, and then 16 on the bottom, or 8 on the bottom, I believe. Let's see. That looks correct. Looks like it does. And then I'm going to ensure that we have a divider 8 dips above. And we're going to go to our assets panel and just pull in that divider and specify the width here. We want to make sure we have that width specified and make sure our parent container has 4 dip corner radius. So with this divider, you need to change the width to 328 to span the full width of the date picker there. And I'm going to drag that in there, push that up so it's 8 dips from the buttons. And now what we're going to do is select our columns, hold down Command and drag it to snap to our divider, and select clip content. And what we're going to do in each row is I'm going to hold Command D and then drag this so it snaps. So you can see that when this content gets pushed down, it whoops. The content gets pushed down, it is ignored. So that's important. But you can't actually see it in the way we've currently implemented it. One thing we do need to add is a selected state, for example. So I could go ahead and delete this, copy this instance, select that column, and whoops, select the second column or any column and paste it in there, and just make sure it's aligned appropriately. And we now have that year selection view implemented, and we now have our date picker views, or our year selection view. I'm going to just copy these once more. So here we have that column, but you can't actually see it in how we've specified it currently, but you get the idea of this component, although it appears to be hidden. So we can do the same exact thing here, just duplicating this, making sure they are snapping appropriately. And now I have these column views built out, and we're good to go. We have our year selection view. So if I ever wanted to actually swap this component with a selected one, due to our naming conventions, we can go ahead and do that very, very quickly in our instance drop-down menu. And that is our year selection view. Make that a main component. Go ahead and drag that over there. And now that one's specified, we have two created. Let's go ahead and tackle one of the more complex views. So with this calendar view, let's go ahead and copy that naming convention here on mobile. We have the calendar view. We clearly can utilize the mobile calendar header. So we have that. So our mobile calendar header is done. We're going to wrap it in a frame, and it's going to be called mobile/calendar view. And we are going to specify the height to be 512. Whoops. And once that's set to 512, we're going to set the fill color to surface. And again, this year selection view actually has, I apologize, an effect style of 24 dips. And so does this calendar view. So let's go ahead and specify that. And in this element, I need to go ahead and change this 000 color style to text and iconography high emphasis. Now that everything is attached to color styles, we're good to go. And on this calendar view, let's specify the corner radius to 4 dips. So now that we have that, we need to start creating these individual cells. So in this format, we're going to go ahead and specify the date here. So it is utilizing a cell of 40 by 40 dips. So we'll make that frame 40 by 40. Set the fill to surface. And copy this text style in that cell, paste it in here, and center it, and just the only difference being the color. So this uses a medium emphasis color style. So we need to specify that. Set that to medium emphasis. I can even duplicate this. Whoops. I can duplicate it. Ensure that that's set to a number now. And that is centered. And the numbers have a color style high emphasis. And we're going to need to name these cells. So we have it's an element, and this is the date cell, day cell, And then we're going to go ahead and copy that, specify this as the elements date, day cell. Wait, no, date, number, cell. You can name it honestly whatever makes most sense for you or in your team or organization. And then, of course, we're going to need a unselected variant, which is what this will be. And then we'll have a selected variant as well. If I go ahead and change that to selected. And with the selected variant, we need a rectangle set 36 by 36 dips with the primary color. So we need to change this color style to content on primary. And then go ahead and create a rectangle within the frame. Set that to 36 by 36 dips and round it out and then center it and use command left bracket to push it backwards. And now that we have this selected state, we need to change the fill color to primary. And we now have our text style set properly. So we may want to push this over 1 pixel as it doesn't look centered optically, but now it does since we pushed it over. And with that, we can go ahead and make this a main component, and everything should be scaling accordingly. I'll set the constraints properly to the selected state as well. And this typography is good to go. Make that a main component and make the date day a main component and the date number cell a main component. And we should be good to go. All we need to do is start to compose this accordingly. So in this variant, you can see that the dates are displayed and they snap, it looks like, right below the calendar header. So I'm going to make that snap, and the padding left is set to 24, and all I'm going to do is duplicate this and make sure it's four dips to the right, and then I'm going to duplicate it again and keep duplicating it. And since I have that spacing specified, I am good to go. Just need to duplicate. Now that I have those 3, 6, I need to apply those 7 days here in the week, and I now have that. I'm gonna go ahead and double check my spacing here. So the spacing is not supposed to be set to 24 on the left. It's supposed to be set to 12 for the cells and the actually selecting the date, and I have it set to 24, so my apologies. So now the content is centered properly, and now what we're going to do is go ahead and select our date number cell and duplicate that and snap that here. So that's day 1, and then we're going to go ahead and create an entire row of this, and it's going to be very simple. I'm going to go ahead and create one row with you. So all we have to do is duplicate it, ensure that there's 4 pixel spacing between all elements here. And I'm going to just keep repeating that all the way across the entire row. And I'm going to just do the same thing, select all these elements and ensure that they all stack. And just duplicate that again and duplicate it again. And I have my 6 rows in its entirety, and we just need one more. We need the bottom one, which is day 30. If we go ahead and check that out, and what we can do, since we have our components named properly, I can click this and make sure it's the selected state. And I'm going to pause this video and go ahead and add in these buttons and also rename all these days. So I'll be right back. Now I've created this mobile calendar view, and all I did was I copied the buttons from our year selection view because the spacing specifications are the same on this calendar view. So I pasted that in, and I pasted it once I selected the parent container. And that did me a big favor and just applied that in the exact same position. And here you go. We have our calendar view. I'm going to turn that into a main component now. And we've kind of debunked the complexity of this. And the only thing missing is this current date. So that is a current date cell. So what we're going to do is duplicate the date number cell that's selected, and then we're going to detach that. And I'm going to go ahead and rename this to current date, as it's a specific cell. And then with the current date specified, I'm going to select my rectangle and apply a 1 pixel stroke that is should be set to let's see, surfaces high emphasis, and we're going to delete that fill, and we're going to go ahead and select our text now and ensure that the content is set to active or high emphasis. So that is our current date variant of the cell. So what I can do is make this a master component, or main component, excuse me, and then we can even go ahead and select this cell in our calendar view now, and now we have a current date variant. So now we have that, and with our current date variant, I'm going to actually push that pixel 1 pixel over to the right. 1 pixel over to the left, just to make it look more optically aligned, and we're now good to go. And now we can go ahead and set this aside in the calendar view. We have the proper cells needed for our calendars for mobile, and we also have a mobile range picker, which I'm going to set aside and let you challenge yourself and build that. And essentially with this overlay, what you're going to want to do is just create an element that you can overlay or place under all of these rows here, these cells, to view that effect accordingly. So what we can do in actually our calendar component is go ahead and start to select all of these, and you could put them in columns or rows as needed. So for example, whatever you and your team find most efficient, I can specify this as row 3. Here you can clearly see that we have row 1. So row 1, and then this happens to be row 2. So that's important. And I just realized I messed up this calendar view. We need this calendar view to stack properly. So if I go ahead and click on this calendar view, it's actually not positioned properly. So I need to go ahead, and what I'm going to do is pause this and make all of these rows, and make sure I push this element down, and I'll be right back. All my elements aligned properly, and I group them into rows. Even if there's only one element on that row, say you were to build out that entire row moving forward, you could stretch this out and snap it. You can ensure that the width snapped appropriately, and then if you needed to modify it, you can go ahead and duplicate it and start snapping elements to the end and middle of your elements as needed. It's just a quick way to keep things organized and just keep those layers clean. I highly recommend it. As you can see here, have those wrapped into frames. If not, it's a ton of cells just being viewed when you expand it in the layers panel. So with that specified, we have our calendar view done, and I'm going to challenge you to build out the this other view, the mobile range picker, where you'll have a selected state. And for the selected state, you'll have the 2 months as well, so you can detach the calendar header and copy that text property and whatnot. And yeah, you just need to create like a selected state element, turn that into a component, and then just put that under the rows. And you can reference the calendar view for that. So now we're going to go ahead and approach a variant of the desktop. Desktop is slightly different since it's on a bigger device. You'll notice that it's very dense. On the desktop here, we have a very dense view where the cells for the desktop variant are set to 32 by 32 dips here. Same states for each cell. We have the current date, we have the selected date, and then we have the default one here. And yeah, I mean, and then we also have one of the more complex ones, the date range picker, where you're selecting from one month to another month. And we're going to go ahead and build out this date range picker, and then I'm going to challenge you to build out the following date range pickers by yourself, as this is a very dense video of information. This should be good practice for you. So we're going to go ahead and start off by identifying the low-level elements. So with that said, we have here cells set to 32 by 32, and then we have these icons. So I'm going to go ahead and grab these cells here. Since we did apply constraints to these cells, all we have to do is detach them, rename them properly. And now that I realize it, we're going to need to categorize these cells. So these are going to be the mobile versions. So we're going to have to categorize all of these to live under mobile, because we're going to have cells for desktop as well. So I'm just going in and just renaming certain elements here. Just applying mobile. So just going in, copying and pasting real quick. And once you've done that, you should be good to go. And now the nice thing about this is, since we've renamed all these to mobile, we can go ahead and copy all these variants. We may not need these at first, but I'm going to detach those instances. And we can go ahead and change, if we batch rename, if I select everything and then hit Command R, and then I type in mobile, I can then go down to this replace with and type in desktop. So now I have my desktop variants. If we look into the layers here, we have our desktop cells. And since our constraints are set properly to center, we can just modify the parent container and everything will resize properly. So that's very helpful. One thing we are going to want to do is create this selected state here. This selected, this range here of between the current date, the selected date, the start date, and the end date. So what we're going to want to do is create that right now. So we need to ensure that we know what the height of this date is set to. So it might be referenced in another spec. That selected state there, let's see, on desktop, the height of that is more than likely set to 28 dips in height. That's what I'm going to go with. Yep, set to 28. Now with that said, let's go ahead and just start cranking this out. I'm going to grab the icons I need here, my arrows here, left and right. I'm going to copy this here. We don't need no drop down arrow, so I'm going to delete that. I do need this caption text style. Make sure that's set to high emphasis. Go change that here. Make sure that's set to high emphasis. Now that that's systematized, we can go ahead and move on. We have a frame here. And let's go ahead and grab this name here, desktop date range picker. So now that I've copied that, select this parent name, parent frame, and I'm gonna go ahead and set the corner radius to 4. And we got a width of 512 dips and a height of 280. And with that, we can get rolling. So one thing we can do is focus on the base layer of these components, right? So what is the base layer? Well, things that aren't going to be moving, that will stay in place, is and that won't be as dynamic depending upon the month, since there are specific days in each month. So this will all change, these cells. So that'll vary in like how many rows there'll be and how many cells in each row. But the days will stay, and the arrow and month will stay, and this divider. So we're going to go ahead and add this divider. This divider takes up the whole height of this date range picker. So if we go to our assets panel, option 2, pull in that divider, I'm going to hit Command Shift Option, type in rotate left, and then I'm going to, now I have it vertically set, and it's already in my parent frame, in the parent container, which is great. And I'm going to set the height to 280. So then I'm going to just hold down Option V, Option H. So now it is horizontally aligned perfect in between both sides of this date range picker, as indicated here. And if we haven't already, let's go ahead and change this fill to surface. Apply an effect style of 8 dips, because this is used in menus and submenus, as a menu or submenu. And now we're going to go ahead and add in our arrows. So with that said, we're going to add this arrow here, add this second arrow there, and it is 16 dips from the top and right. So if I snap that, 16 dips from the top and right. We're good to go there. And with that applied, now we need to go ahead and copy this text style. And September here seems to be 32 dips from the baseline, 32 dips from the top of the parent container. And the spacing seems to be aligned center horizontally between these elements specified here. So if we do 256 minus 32, we get 224. So if we create a frame of 224 dips wide, so if I wrap this in a frame, label this as row 1 or header row, header. I can just label that header. I'm going to specify this to 224. You'll notice that distance gives me 16 dips to the right. And why I'm wrapping this in a frame is because when I copy this text here and I paste it in this header, so I'm going to paste it in there, and it's in that parent frame, so I'm going to vertically align it and horizontally align it so that it is vertical here on the calendar side. And one thing I could even do is, if I wanted, if I didn't want to repeat that, I can delete this icon, and what I can do is select the icon here and hold Option D and snap that to the right, and then hit Shift H, and that aligns properly. And now I have this spacing set appropriately, so that's awesome. So now we have September and October, so I can rename that. And one thing we want to ensure is that it's set to text align center on both elements. And we're going to go ahead and specify that the this typography centers horizontally in terms of when it resizes. So that's important. So go ahead and change that to October 2019. And then we'll change this to September 2019. And we should be good to go. Awesome. So with that specified, we have the header left, and then we have the header right. And these could both be categorized on the left, like month left and month right. So we're gonna start off with these days here for the desktop view. And again, they have a height of 32 by 32 dips, which we've already specified here. And what we want to do is I'm going to select all these cells here. And now I want to actually go ahead and resize these to 32. And notice that all the content centered and then it got cropped, right? But the reason this has been cropped is because we need to specify this to have a height and width of 28. And then I'm going to go ahead and center that once more. And I'm going to do the same exact thing for the current date cell type. So now, and then just center that. And now we are good to go. We need to push this over 1 pixel so that it is center in our elements here. And with that centered, we are good to go. So now I'm going to create these multiple main components, and I can copy this desktop day cell is what it's currently labeled as, and I'm going to specify the date on both the left and right sides. And as you can see here, the spacing here between the icon above and between the dates isn't specified. It might be specified here. It's set to 12, as you can see. Set to 12, so we can go ahead and implement that here. Select that date range picker, paste it. I'm going to hold Option A, snap that. It's 16, set to 16 dips on the left, and the spacing is 12 already by default. So this is awesome. I can go ahead and just copy these dates, and now I have all 7 days here specified. And what I can do is select all these from the get-go, my layers panel, group them, label them row days. I can label this as row days, or whatever you find most intuitive or most effective. That's what I recommend. And then I'm going to ensure, that the spacing here is set appropriately. And once that is set properly, we are good to go. Have those days here, row days left. I'm going to push that up. Whoops. And then I'm going to organize these in my layers panel accordingly. The header right, and then the row days right. And then next, we're going to want to just go ahead and start implementing our days here. And what I'm going to do is just copy this date number cell for the desktop, paste it, and with that, we have it now aligned already. And then we're going to just create these rows here. And there is no spacing between these cells. So I can just keep hitting Command D to replicate that. Then I can group this, label this row 3 left. And then I can label this, I can group this as well, row 2 left. And then what I can do is just continue to duplicate this downward and just ensure that these are incrementing properly. So this is row 4. And then we got row 5 here in action, and then we got row 6. So we're gonna go ahead and verify how many rows are needed here for this date. We got 5, 6 in total. We got 1, 2, 3, 4. We need to create one more row, it seems like. Which doesn't seem right. Whoops, I'm checking out the wrong. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 6 in total. So we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And this row, we only got, we only have 1 here specified. 1 day on the last row. And there's a 8 dip 8 pixel padding there on the bottom. So I need to go ahead and verify that. Currently it's set to 4. I don't know why that is. And then the padding on top set to 16 and the bottom is set to 8. And then I have the height set to 280, but it's still prompting me with dimensions of 4 on the bottom, which I don't understand. So what we can do is go ahead and select our parent frame and just specify that to 8. Currently set to 7, so I'll just push that down 1 more pixel. And there we have it. We now have this variant here made. I'm gonna go ahead and pause this and make this other side, and you should do the same. And I'm just gonna name everything accordingly. Can pause this. So now I've created these rows here on the right side. So I'm gonna just allow you to go ahead and add all the dates and days here so that it's precise and you can align it with what is specified in the spec here. And I'm gonna challenge you to make this desktop date picker by yourself and the year selection view. We already have the elements here ready and named properly for our design system. You just need to resize these year selection cells. And one thing I'm going to go over with you but not build out entirely, I'm going to just guide you, is creating this date range selection. So what you're going to want to do to represent that range selection, we're going to I duplicated this and just removed the fill and changed this color here on this shape to primary low emphasis. And I changed the constraints so that the constraints of this were on this element. I need to detach it, my bad. Now I need to select the shape and set the constraints to left and right, so that way when I select the parent container I can stretch it out properly, so I can get that range I need. And under range, I'm going to select it's going to be named elements/desktop/ range selection. So that's that. Now that we have that, you can go ahead and make that a main component, and you can copy it. And then how you would use it is if you paste it into your date range picker, you're going to want to place it behind all your layers to be below and align it with the height and the size of your text box. And then you can go ahead and start stretching that out as needed to select your dates. And do note that everything's good to go in that regard. And there is a state where it's just one cell too. So that's awesome. And that is all I have to show you today, folks. I challenge you to make these other desktop variants and this mobile variant. And with all that knowledge, you have all the cells and everything needed to build the following. And thank you so much for watching. I know this was a long one. I hope you learned a lot and how to deconstruct these images and actually turn this into a system. I know it's challenging, but very rewarding for you. If you can get this into your muscle memory as a designer, you will become a very valuable design system designer and designer. Thanks so much. Thank yourself, and have a good one.